That's a great question. So
Phenomenal.
the question is, how do you see the impact of electronic health care records impacting your practice and business of medicine?
Right.
Well, and also just us as consumers.
And for the consumers as well, what's the impact of the consumer? Like having your medical records on your iPhone to go anywhere, but then are you allowed to do that? I know there's incredibly stringent HIPAA requirements, and can I have my records, or do they belong to me? Do they belong to you?
You know, it's transformative. It's an incredibly disruptive force, which I think overall is positive. But let me kind of say a few things that I think are good and a few things I think are not so good about electronic medical records. So what's good is you can now read our writing. No one ever could before. I actually had good penmanship till I went to medical school.
It was a class.
I don't know.
I always suspected as much.
I learned poor penmanship. No one can read my writing. So that's great. They can now. We couldn't stand it with paper anymore because of a couple of things. We were hiring people constantly to search for charts. We had 4 locations. If someone got seen in our Ashburn site and then showed up in the Sterling site the next day or whatever, it was like, you know, people were faxing records and you couldn't read them and all this business. So the ease of getting to look at what's going on with the patient is greatly improved with electronic medical records. I think there's also an improvement in getting the information from hospitals to us, to specialists, but all this requires interconnectivity. There's some safeguards. We're not perfect. We do stupid things sometimes. We forget that someone is allergic to penicillin and write penicillin, things like that. So you can have systems where when you're writing it, and then the system goes ding, 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 no, 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 that person reacts to that drug. Or ding, 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 this drug is interacting with that drug. You don't always know these things. You can't know what, in fact, the FDA doesn't know. There are no studies that show how many of these drugs interact. And there's very few studies done on putting 2 drugs together. And think of how many people are on 5, 6, 10 drugs. We have no clue in this industry what that does. So that won't help you with that other than common sense tells you it's not good. So I think the ease of getting the information of the patient and the portability is probably the big plus. The negatives are tremendous requirements for the IT world. We do not have the talent in this country to meet the mandates that have been set by not just this president, but the one before us, in timelines for getting things done with electronic medical records. And so there are a lot of people not terribly well trained doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing in the IT industry. Regulations haven't caught up with this yet. What happens when you're implementing a system and some very important set of data doesn't go where it needs to go and it's sitting in some box that's not getting opened anymore and someone has just transcribed a couple of numbers or digits? You know, these are very serious things. So IT errors can lead to devastating results or lack of results. People not getting information, the wrong people getting information, if, you know, codes and things are transcribed incorrectly. What happens if things don't get backed up properly? And then you lose all this data. Wouldn't be the first time that's happened. So you're in that industry, you know how it is. And then the expense. So our practice, we've spent over $3 million in implementing the system that we have. It's far from perfect. It's considered the state of the art. This is the state of the art. You know, we're back in the caveman days yet with our technology. So you'd think that we're so smart. You'd think that we have it so great. This technology, we're not at the ATM banking level at all. I think it's the right thing, but I think it's expensive. Sometimes, you know, it's better to change a little slowly. You know, if we look at the Iron Curtain coming down, you know, didn't it happen rather quickly? And maybe it would have been better if it had happened a little more slowly. So it's here to stay. It's expensive. I worry about security of patients' records. Records are going to go a lot of places that, you know, we would probably prefer they didn't. And it's going to allow the government to stick their nose into all kinds of things about personal information that they didn't ever have the right or ability to do before. And, you know, is that good or is that not? And, you know, I think sometimes that's concerning. And not just government, but others. So I guess my overall gestalt is I think it's a good thing, but it's going to cost the industry a lot of money, which means costing people a lot of money. And if we get too depersonalized, And we're only talking to computers and thinking about systems and processes, and we're forgetting that there's a human being there with feelings, and they need to be talking to a doctor, not someone inputting information into the computer. We have a whole culture change within the industry. So overall, I'm positive about it. I'm going to a conference next week in Vegas. There will be 60,000 people at this conference. It's the HIMSS conference, where all the health information people in the medical field come together and talk this talk. Hundreds of lectures and things going on. So it's an exciting field. It's an exciting time. It too will have its bust. You know, so right now no one can ever see anything but glory for anyone entering into the healthcare IT industry. Just get on and ride. You know, like everything else, there will be a bubble with this too, and you know, depending on what happens with this next election, you know, this could change it a lot. I don't know how the government and the taxpayer is going to be able to pay for all of this.
It's a quandary, and I don't even know where we're going to go, and if you shift administrations, and I don't want to get in necessarily to a political debate because I don't think this is the time or the place, but it is a quagmire. It's a problem. We have a huge aging population who are drivers who have this mentality that I will go down. You know, I'm going to be ski boarding at 107. You know, I mean, that's really the mentality of a baby boomer. It's like, you know, if I can get my hair color and my teeth, you know, all this stuff done, I'm going to ride down that wave. You know, I'm going to be out there. I'm going to retire, you know, in Maui and surfboard in my hundreds. I mean, and they're demanding it. I mean, they're expecting it. So I think that that's coming to, I mean, I think that's going to be a driving impact on medical care in the future.
I welcome that kind of patient, though, because that's a patient that's motivated to do things with their health and live their life to the best of their ability and be the best they can be. So that's a great kind of patient. The problem is that the answer for our chronic medical conditions are not going to be had by more drugs and more surgery. 70% of our healthcare dollars today are spent on chronic medical conditions. To change that, we must change the way we live, the way we eat, the way we think, and the time we take for ourselves. And those answers I don't see being had with this mainstream medical model, this conventional medical model that doesn't want to change. And there's so many financial drivers to not change it. And then we haven't talked about tort reform and what is being done just for legal reasons that are just a cost and a burden to the system, and sometimes very damaging to the patient because it exposes them to excess radiation from a lot of procedures and things that are radiologic tests and things that are being done only for medical legal reasons.
Right, yeah, I know, and it's a huge, huge concern. We have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to know, do you provide an environmental assessment of toxins on a person, and do you have a detox protocol?
Wow, that is a great question. So the question is, do you provide, asking a doctor, asking Grace if she provides a detox medical assessment, and what was the other half of that? And
I
if
want to know if she does an environmental assessment to know the toxin load on the person,
and an environmental assessment to know the toxic load. Wow, that's fascinating. That's a whole new genre of medicine, I think, too.
I recently attended a conference put on by Hopkins, and the head of toxicology gave a wonderful lecture on this. We're exposed to 100,000 different chemicals every day. So all of us are. And if you stop and think about it, it's not that hard to think about. The deodorant, the hairspray, you know, on and on. Of which 17% we know about, we've done research. So the rest we don't even have research on, so we don't even know what the rest do. God forbid mixing them all together. So the toxic load on us is huge. Anything you can do to just start thinking about detoxing your life, just start doing it. Eating organically, on and on and on. So your question is a very good one, because really, how can we assess what's chronically wrong with people if we're not thinking what toxins could be acting on this person? And that is very foreign to mainstream thinking and mainstream medicine today. Yes, we do this. And who's particularly good at it are our naturopaths, because they're well trained in this area. We're not, conventional doctors are not conventionally trained in detox. There's a few toxins that we know about, like arsenic and a few things like this, but you know, we don't really look for toxins that much in a mainstream training. Mercury, big issue. It's looking like mercury may be a factor in Alzheimer's as well. There's a study that's been published out of University of Calgary showing this. How do we get mercury? The amalgam in our fillings, and amalgam has never actually been FDA tested. It was grandfathered in, but it would never meet approval today. And when we eat food and hot substances in our mouth, the mercury becomes aerosolized, and we breathe it in. It goes through our body. I assure you, anyone in this room, you get a toxin testing. Everyone in this room is toxic for mercury. We all are, and we get it from our fish. And fish is good, but fish are now infected with mercury, infested with it. So mercury is a big one. There's a toxin panel. Depending on the presentation, different toxin panels can be ordered. We order some we call it boutique labs for toxin assessments. So depending on what you have and how you're presenting would direct the testing that I would suggest. I don't want to suggest that just everyone go and get every test they can think of, because it's expensive and sometimes can lead you in the wrong direction as well. But it's not just toxins. And yes, then if you find these toxins, there are ways to get this stuff out of you. Chelate it out and detoxify, and there's detoxifying diets. And you need to deal with people who know this, and I would caution against just kind of doing the latest fad on the internet, because this can be dangerous as well. So it's a huge, huge issue, and the cost to research these daily toxins that we now don't even know what it does would be about $6 billion, and would involve the carnage of 6 million animals. So actually this man who was addressing this from Hopkins was saying that with using tissue research, tissue technology, we can prevent also the carnage of the animals.
I think there's great opportunity. There's a great future in medicine. I think we have a long way to go. I admire what you do. I admire so much you've taken traditional medicine and blended it with alternative there, because I think a lot of medical practitioners get criticized for that. But I think the population, if we stop and listen to what people are telling us today, they want to have choices in medicine. They don't feel that necessarily prescription is the answer, that good health choices and knowing what to do is really, really important for ourselves and for our family. I can't thank you enough for joining us. It's been a fascinating. I think we could have a 4-part series talking about medicine and alternative and anti-aging and where you're going in the future. This has been fantastic, and I invite those in the audience to stay and talk with you a few moments and ask more questions. It's been terrific, and I want to say thank you to everybody who got up early this morning and joined us here at Pillsbury to talk with Dr. Grace Keenan. It's been terrific.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.